So UFC 314 takes place this Saturday in Miami, headlined by Alexander Volkanovski taking on Diego Lopez for the vacant UFC featherweight title. And today we're going to be going through the UFC 314 card based on these 5 categories. So we have got my most hyped matchup, an underrated banger, a fight with a guaranteed finish, my lock of the card, and finally my underdog pick on the card. So starting off with my most hyped matchup, it is this one right here, and that is Bryce Mitchell versus Gene Silva. Now this fight has easily had the best build going into it. At the UFC 314 press conference, Bryce Mitchell and Gene Silva completely stole the show. I feel like this is everybody's most hyped matchup on the card. Well, majority anyway. A lot of people are looking forward to seeing Bryce Mitchell get in there with Gene Silva. Both guys are really big names. Obviously, Bryce Mitchell has kind of taken the MMA world by storm recently. Whenever he debuted his worldwide trending episode 1 of Arkansanity, it's created a lot of divide for Bryce Mitchell. A lot of people either love him or they hate him. Gene Silva, on the other hand, he's got like this cult-like following off the just explosion in popularity of the fighting nerds. Gene Silva's also got a very fun fight style. I don't know if this fight is actually going to win fight of the night. In fact, I know for a fact it won't. This fight might not live up to expectations. Some might say this fight actually may end up being boring, which might be a bit contradictory as to why I have it as my most hyped. But the build-up, this has easily been the best build-up to any fight on the UFC 314 card. It's the fight that has stood out the most in my opinion. I'm looking forward to seeing their back and forth during fight week this week. I'm looking forward to seeing their face-off at the weigh-ins. And I'm looking forward to seeing this matchup. How elite level is Gene Silva? Is he going to knock out Bryce Mitchell and solidify himself as a top contender in the UFC's featherweight division? As Bryce Mitchell, in my opinion, is a top level fighter in the featherweight division. Or is Bryce Mitchell going to go out there and fraud check Gene Silva and show the levels between both guys and show why Bryce Mitchell deserves to be in this position that he is in? Now, I would go into more detail on who I think would win this matchup, but I need to save that for the end because this might intertwine into a different category, so I'm going to have to move on from this one. Although you might know what my prediction is going to be if you've seen my predictions videos yesterday. If you haven't, make sure you go and watch it. Moving on to underrated banger. This one right here between Dan Ige versus Sean Woodson. Now both guys don't have a lot of finishes on their MMA record. Dan Ige does have a lot of power. I mean, we just seen in his recent performance. Yes, he did lose. Dan Ige is on a 2-fight losing streak to Lerone Murphy and Diego Lopez, so 2 of the best featherweights right now in the division. Sean Woodson is coming off a big win over Padilla, if I remember correctly, on the Colby Covington, Joaquin Buckley, Tampa Bay card in December. Sean Woodson coming off a big first round KO there. Good performance from him. I think these guys stylistically will gel really well. I think this will make for a very exciting matchup. I think there will be a lot of good exchanges on the feet. That's where I think this fight will predominantly take place. Now yes, Dan Ige is very well rounded and could look to grapple in there against Sean Woodson because Sean Woodson is an absolute freak of nature in there. This guy's 6'2" as a featherweight. That is insane. But I think Dan Ige is going to predominantly strike with Sean Woodson, and I think we're going to get a lot of fun striking exchanges between both guys. Will there be a finish? I'm unsure because Sean Woodson has only ever been finished once in his professional MMA career, and that was by a Darce choke. And Dan Ige, he is tough to finish. I mean, Dan Ige has been in there with the who's of the division. You've got Bryce Mitchell, Diego Lopez, Lerone Murphy, Movsar Evloev, Josh Emmett, Edson Barboza, this guy, Calvin Kattar. This guy has been in there with the best featherweights right now in the UFC, and this is going to be a really good indication on how good Sean Woodson is. Is this guy going to look to propel up the rankings? Is he going to be a future title challenger? Is he a new mainstay in the featherweight division? We will find all of this out at UFC 314, and this is a fight that I think everybody should tune in for. This is on the prelims. I think it's the prelim headliner, if I remember correctly, so make sure you are there to watch this fight. I think it will be a really fun one. Moving on, we have got fight with a guaranteed finish. Is it just me that thinks Paddy Pimblett versus Michael Chandler is going under the radar? Ignore that voice break, that was crazy. But I feel like this fight isn't being spoken about enough, and I am getting worried because we need Paddy Pimblett to win this matchup, but I feel like Paddy Pimblett is being tricked, lured by Michael Chandler, because any interaction we have seen with these guys, you're seeing Paddy Pimblett, when Michael Chandler was saying he was getting ready for Paddy Pimblett, he had the wig on, Paddy commenting, "Yes lad, can't see you at the top" or something underneath Michael Chandler's post. When they were doing that interview over Zoom or whatever it was, on the call, they seem to be very buddy. We need Paddy Pimblett to wake up. We cannot have this guy be lured in by Michael Chandler, because Michael Chandler, yes, the guy's on a losing streak. Yes, the guy's lost more than he's won in the UFC, but he is still dangerous. I think this fight has a finish written all over it. If Paddy Pimblett is going to beat Michael Chandler, I think he stops him. A lot of people are saying Michael Chandler will be submitted by Paddy Pimblett, and I can't see that. I really can't see that being an outcome, although I just don't see Paddy Pimblett being able to out-wrestle and out-grapple in the sense of taking Michael Chandler down. I think if Pimblett is going to get a submission, it's going to be off his back, with Michael Chandler being the one initiating the grappling. But for Michael Chandler, who is my pick, by the way, for this fight, although this fight could really go either way, Paddy Pimblett is also a big puncher. He carries a lot of punch power, and don't be surprised if Paddy Pimblett is able to find that off button on Michael Chandler's chin, because he is a big puncher. But I just feel like Michael Chandler, I can just envision it, round 3, Michael Chandler exploding up over the top of Paddy Pimblett, who does tend to drop his hands and leave his chin in the air, cracking Paddy Pimblett as Pimblett is starting to fade. Yes, Michael Chandler does fade in fights as well. However, Michael Chandler, you just have to go with Michael Chandler is more proven over 5 rounds. In my opinion, he has a better gas tank than what Paddy Pimblett has. The only time we've really seen Paddy Pimblett have a pretty shitty gas tank, to be honest, was in there against Tony Ferguson, where Paddy Pimblett nearly had Tony Ferguson out of there. And I feel like you might get moments like that in there with Michael Chandler, because Paddy is a big puncher. I could see him stinging Michael Chandler and maybe just blowing his load, trying to get Michael Chandler out of there, who is very durable, and just gassing himself out like we've seen in the Tony Ferguson matchup. And then that's where we see Michael Chandler exploding in with the big right hand. I think he's going to drop Paddy Pimblett. I know people say Paddy Pimblett's a sorcerer, he doesn't get knocked out, but I think Michael Chandler will catch him over the top with an overhand right, drop Paddy Pimblett. Let's not forget, Michael Chandler is a known cheat. This guy is willing to punch you in the back of the head to try and get the finish. That has to count for something. I think they might end up going, this is an early stoppage, blah blah, Pimblett's not completely out cold. But regardless of how this fight goes, if it's Paddy that wins, if it's Chandler that wins, somebody is getting finished in this matchup. That is 100% guaranteed. You heard it here first. Moving on to my lock of the card. Look, I know a lot of people are picking Diego Lopez, and I can understand why. I mean, Diego Lopez is in form. This guy is very active as well. He's coming off big wins over the likes of Dan Ige, Brian Ortega, his win over Sadiq Youssef as well, which I think is a really underrated win. And that sequence and how he knocked out Sadiq Youssef, I can really see Volkanovski being caught with that. However, I think Volkanovski is just levels above Diego Lopez. He's more technical, and I know technical gets thrown about sometimes. For example, like Steve Erceg, wow, he's so technical, but it looks like he's in a fucking sparring session and he's getting pieced up. He's just hitting the forearms of Brandon Moreno. That's not what Volkanovski is. Volkanovski deals well with taller opponents. Just in past, he beat Max Holloway, who has kind of got a similar frame to Diego Lopez. Lopez is obviously a much bigger puncher than what Max Holloway is. And if we look at the Islam Makhachev first fight, that's where Volkanovski had a lot of success in there against Islam. Some people actually said that Volkanovski beat Islam first time round. I don't agree with that, but I think Volkanovski, he's taking the correct amount of time off. He's not rushing back in. That was the issue. He took that matchup against Islam Makhachev at short notice, which might go down as one of the worst career moves in MMA history. He got caught with that head kick, then wanted to jump right back in there against Ilia Topuria, and we seen Ilia Topuria slump him. Now, if Volkanovski took an extra couple of months off, or took the right time off that was probably recommended to him, how different would that Ilia Topuria matchup been? I'm not too sure. I think Ilia, stylistically, in the grand scheme of things, is a tough opponent for Volkanovski, but I think the matchup would have played out a lot differently. Now he's fully fit, he's ready to come back. I think Volkanovski will have a bit of cage rust, ring rust, if you want to call it that, early on. I can see him coming through a bit of adversity. I can see Diego Lopez cracking him and hurting him, and I can see Diego Lopez really chasing a finish on Volkanovski early on. But I think as the fight goes on, like we have seen with Diego Lopez recently, when the levels increase and he cannot get you out of there early, he does fade. Volkanovski is easily the best opponent Diego Lopez has faced to date. On the feet as well, I think Volkanovski is a much better striker. Obviously, the power is in Diego Lopez's hands, but I think Volkanovski, with his outside and his inside kick, I think he can damage, skirt around the cage a bit, play very defensive early on, and I think as Diego Lopez fades, his hands come down, his chin is always in the air anyway, even when the fight is early on, and I think Volkanovski from the third round onwards, might even be in the late stage of the second round, I think we're going to see a vintage Volkanovski performance in there, and this is my lock of the card. Honestly, I am very, very confident that Alexander Volkanovski is going to beat Diego Lopez at UFC 314. Now imagine if Volkanovski gets KO'd, I will look like a fucking idiot, but I am confident that Volkanovski is back. This guy's claiming the title. And finally, we have got my underdog pick. It is Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell's currently sitting at a plus 218, 225 underdog, depending on what sportsbook you go to. If any of the sportsbooks want to sponsor me, let me know. I'm all for it. But Bryce Mitchell, he is a big underdog in there. And I'm going to be honest, a big reason why Bryce Mitchell is an underdog is because of what Bryce Mitchell has said and the character that Bryce Mitchell is, and the fact that the guy's getting a lot of hate, because realistically, Bryce Mitchell stylistically is a nightmare matchup for Gene Silva. Yes, Gene Silva is a big puncher. The guy is on crazy momentum at the minute. He's never faced a guy of this caliber. He got taken down multiple times by Charles Jourdain in their matchup, and yes, you might say, well, how did that fight end up? Charles Jourdain got KO'd, and that is a possibility in this matchup, but Bryce Mitchell actually is a grappler. Charles Jourdain isn't. Bryce Mitchell is a very high level grappler. Let's not forget, he was able to take down Ilia Topuria in moments of their matchup. He was able to take down and control Edson Barbosa in their matchup. He also dropped him in that matchup. Bryce Mitchell can also strike as well. He's not just a grappler, although if he is looking to get the win here, his key to victory, his path to victory, is obviously his grappling advantage. I think he's going to out-grapple Gene Silva. I've seen some people say Bryce Mitchell by submission, and yes, that is a possibility. He's got really good jiu-jitsu. However, Gene Silva's never been submitted before, and I think he is going to be tough to submit, but I think Bryce Mitchell will be able to grind out Gene Silva to a unanimous 30-27 decision at UFC 314. So yeah, that is me breaking down UFC 314 into different categories. I've done this for UFC 314. It's definitely going to be a series I continue to do. The only one that was missed out on this one that was on UFC 313 was Prospect to keep an eye out for. In my opinion, you can call me a casual all you want. I just don't really see a prospect on this card that I really want to talk about off the top of my head. You can maybe let me know in the comments below a prospect that you're looking forward to seeing on this card. I just don't really see one that I want to include in this video, and I'm not just going to include some random cunt for the sake of it, to be honest. So let me know your opinions in the comments below. Let me know what you would have in the categories listed on screen throughout the video, and as always, thanks for the support. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and I will see you again in the next one.